I'm Jenn. I'm a psychotherapist, mom, and human who has lived through the messiness of life and learned a few things along the way. I teach this stuff. So I decided to create a podcast called The Authenticity Mindset, where we can talk about the truth, take action, and get inspired. Are you ready to join the community? Let's go. Hey, I'm Jenn. Welcome to the Authenticity Mindset. We are here for episode 7. I hope you loved last week's conversation with Erin Albano. That was so fun. Can't wait to have more fun conversations and exciting opportunities to talk about people and their life experience, just like we did with Erin. My goal is to be able to have more and more people share about what it is that is unique about their life story that can be very relatable to other people, right? As a therapist, I get to hear a lot of stories, the insides and outs of people's lives, and I consider that a real privilege and something I'm so grateful for in terms of my career and my life experience. And in that, and hearing so many people's stories, frankly, I find a lot of similarities. A lot of people's stories that I hear and their struggles that they're going through, and the opportunity for people to be vulnerable in that type of a space allows for understanding and togetherness and a sense of, oh, I've been there before, or I've heard this before, or gosh, I know other people experience the same thing. And, again, in therapy school, they call this the concept of mutual aid, is that when we understand that other people are going through the same thing, that in and of itself is a healing process. And for hearing someone else have a struggle or have an overwhelming thought or have something that is getting in their way that you would have never imagined that they're experiencing and feeling, because from the outside it looks so fantastic, right? Aaron is a Broadway superstar and a success story. So who would have thought that some of his own insecurities and struggles and desire to feel more grounded and have more purpose were underneath all of that, right? But we can all relate to that. So I'm so grateful that he took the time and shared some of his story. And I look forward to sharing more with you guys about other people that I know that I've come across in life that I think have words of wisdom and interesting stories to share. And certainly, if you're interested in being a podcast guest, or if you know of someone, you can head to theauthenticitymindset.com, shoot me an email, sign up for updates from us, and we can get connected to see how your story or someone that you know could be inspiring and helpful to align with our mission of finding our authentic voice and being true to ourselves. Because when we are able, as an individual, as a group, as a body, as a group of friends, as you know, those people that you have dinner with that you can't wait to like just go and hang out in their backyard, maybe have a cocktail, maybe have a mocktail, and maybe there's a dog or some kids playing in the yard, and you're just, who cares if the house was messy? Who cares if there's what the caliber of food is? It's just being with those people are the ones that help you feel at peace and help you feel at ease. That's what we're trying to create here. That vibe, right? That sense of these are my people. These are the people that are out there recognizing how hard adulting can be and are trying anyway and are wanting to show up for the best of themselves, of their family, and are stumbling, right? I mean, I hear this all day long. The most significant piece of feedback that I hear in my job is, I just didn't think it was going to be this hard. I just didn't think this whole adulting, parenting, professional balance, work life, getting up every day and getting it done, I just didn't think it was going to be this hard. And I get it. And I'm with you. Samesies, right? And that's not saying that I have it all figured out and I have the perfect answer, but I am saying that the concept that we are struggling with it together means that we're not alone and we're not doing anything wrong. And, one of the things that I have found for myself and for others is that, one of the antidotes to some of that overwhelm and some of that hard is just being able to sit back and be confident and know who you are. I think part of the scramble that people feel and the spirally thoughts and the overwhelm that they get sucked into is when they have lost their sense of self. And so that's what we're trying to realign here and get back. And that's why I created the Authenticity Mindset Masterclass course. It's a self-paced, 6 module course. You can take it at your own pace. You can do as many or as few modules at a time. You can sit and do the worksheets associated with them. You can speed through it. You can come back to it. It's really meant to serve as a tool for busy people. I'm a busy person. I don't have time to sit and like listen to some big long ass lecture series of anything. I certainly don't want to do homework afterwards. And so I created it with that in mind. Like what would be something that I would be able to take on in little bits that I could chew on some knowledge for a little bit and help me feel that much more connected, that much more aligned that day. If I can do something in a 6 minute span that helps me that day, I'm all in. So, if that sounds something interesting to you, by all means, go ahead over to the authenticitymindset.com. You can check it out. It's called the Authenticity Mindset Masterclass Program. Click on the program, take a look, see if it's for you. If you are feeling as though the hardness of life is getting the best of you and you want to come back to yourself, there are tools and tips and strategies and other people there that are doing the exact same work. So it's very exciting to be able to offer that outlet to people for certainly less than a therapy session would be. Not that this is therapy, but we take some of the tools and tips of the trade and we offer it in a non-clinical way that is absorbable for people because not everyone has time to be able to sit and do that one-to-one time that a therapist office is able to provide. So we want more people to have more access to self-improvement and mindset skills and education and coaching that can help improve their life. I really believe it, and I know that in my life experience, I have benefited from mentors, from coaching, from programs, from therapy, from family, from friends, from so many different influences that have guided me along the way. There's not one right way to do it. And so if something fits in your schedule and fits in, you can watch it from your mobile phone and stick your AirPods in while you're sitting on the train or driving in your car. Great. The more the merrier in terms of having new feedback and open opportunities for people to learn what's going to work for them. So, anyway, thank you, Erin. And that's that with the program. And today, I want to talk a little bit about rewiring negative self-talk. What that means is that we as human beings have a negativity bias in our brain. What does that mean? It means that part of our biology and our instincts are wired to protect ourselves, wired to perceive danger, to determine whether or not an environment or people are a predator or prey, right? That's just genetics and how we've evolved over the generations to be able to be the species that we are, these fabulous human beings with cognitive processing abilities and free will that can determine our own life experience. But negative self-talk, what started out as a protective factor through years of survival, has in modern day time actually turned into something quite different, right? And I want to share a little bit about my experience. I said at the very beginning of starting this podcast that there are going to be times where I was going to share more about me and times where I was going to share more skills and tips and tricks and, listen to other people's stories like we just did with Erin. But this one is, something that feels relevant and personal for me to share too, because the concept of negative self-talk was a through line in my life for a very long time. I would say most of my upbringing, definitely all of my 20s and probably into my 30s, did I struggle with a self-perception that was always, never enough. It was hovering on trying to be perfect, knowing I wasn't, and then beating myself up in secret. On the one hand, that got me, to be a very hard worker. It's something that I have always praised myself about is that I have strong work ethics. I can work a 16-hour day better than most of them. I could do the brunch shift and the closing dinner shift and still get home and write a paper for graduate school, which I did at that time in my life. And I took a lot of pride in being such a hard worker. But, looking back on it now, and I think about some of the talk and the wiring that was in place in my head, I wonder if I deserved that kind of pushing. I wonder if I deserved that kind of treatment of myself. And, that there's no one to blame about any of that, right? We can say, upbringing causes that sort of thinking, or, mindset shifts over time, or traumas, or whatever. And certainly all of those are influential factors for many people. And there's that stuff in my life too. But I will say, and I take full ownership and responsibility, that when I was younger, um, I just talked really badly to myself. I never gave myself the credit and the belief that I could have what I achieved, or have what I wanted to achieve, that I could have what I desired. There was stuff about how what most women talk about themselves about, right? Their body, how their appearance, how if other people like them, if men like them, and how people treat them, and if they're deserved to be treated that way. All of those things were definitely present as I was in my formative years to try to develop my sense of self. And ultimately, what I found over time is that the presence of that negative self-talk, that negative belief system about who I was, right? I was essentially just not good enough, that I had to overwork, overachieve, overaccomplish, prove everybody wrong as a means to compensate for how I was talking about myself. Well, first of all, I was totally going to burn myself to the ground, which I did. And second of all, I was never actually evolving and growing and changing out of what I believed to be true about myself. I was just covering it up and making it up, right? And trying to show the world that I wasn't as bad as I actually thought that I was. And, you know, God help me if I ever had to interact with someone who knew me in my, late 20s and early 30s. I'm sure they thought some things about me and how I was presenting myself at the time, as a person who was trying to overcompensate, right, for some of the language that I noticed was happening in my head. So I say that because I know that I'm not alone in having had that experience. And certainly now, as a clinician, as a therapist, as a mom, as a midlife woman, who doesn't necessarily subscribe to that type of belief system about myself anymore. I certainly have flaws and things that I like to work on and improve and change, but I don't actually believe that I'm not good enough anymore. I don't actually believe that I have to grind myself to the bone as a means of deserving having a presence and existence and a voice. And I'm grateful for that. And part of how that changed, right? What is it that evolved? What is it that happened to get me from a place that at one period of time in my life I was consumed by feeling as though I was never going to get out of some non-deserving. Self-loathing might be like a little bit of a harsh way to say it, but I don't know. There were moments where I was really um, stuck in thinking that what I wanted to be possible for myself just wasn't going to be possible with me being who I was. I would have had to drastically change myself. And that's hard to do when you're paying bills and trying to just get through the day. No one has time to drastically change themselves, and frankly, nor should they, right? This whole movement and this message that we're sending with authenticity is you don't have to be anybody else but yourself. Being yourself is actually the key, is the magic, is the path to peace, is if you can just get back to who you were meant to be all along. So if you're noticing that negative self-talk is influencing or preventing you from being that authentic self, being that true person, then you are obligated to do something about that, right? We can't just let the influence of negativity and how we believe about ourselves and how we talk about ourselves to take away from our having access to this authentic experience. Um, so the first step is really recognizing that it's happening. Again, going back in time, um, I moved to New York from California right after college and was waiting tables to pay my bills and pay my way, and was an artist and was really inspired and excited to be able to live and experience New York City in a way that my childhood self had dreamed of. And in the course of that time, found myself, pretty quickly just trapped in, oh shoot, like I gotta pay my Metro card, I gotta pay my rent, I gotta pay my way. I don't really have time to go do this adventure or that adventure that I thought was possible. And I know not everyone has that experience necessarily, sort of fall into that cycle of survival at a young age, at 22, 23, 24 years old. I know a lot of people do. But either way, that was true for me, right? I was very much in that place of needing to get through life, and I didn't really have time or energy left to figure out who I was going to be in the meantime. And so what happened is that negativity bias, right, what we started off with from survival, just kind of stepped in. It said, you don't have time to like yourself. You don't have time to like think things are possible. You just gotta like get to your gig, right? Get to your job, get the next paycheck. You gotta make it happen. And so for a very long time, that is all that I could see as possible in terms of my life experience. It was surviving, getting to the next get, assuming that it was hard and negative along the way, and that I couldn't be or do or experience anything more. And so what happened is essentially I crashed and burned. I got so overwhelmed and I found myself, associating with the wrong people, doing the wrong things, alone. You ever had those moments? Okay, it's like movie script moment, right? But like you're alone in your apartment, it's dark, and you're staring at the wall, and you're like, where the fuck did I take a wrong turn? But like, this is not how it's supposed to go. And I definitely had that moment. If I don't make a change, if I don't start treating myself like a person who deserves better, I may not get it. And is that okay? Is that okay to just say, I can't have better than this? Is me sitting alone staring at this wall like the best that I'm going to offer myself? So no, I did not want that to be all that I could have for myself. So again, I was aware that that was influencing me. I was aware that this perception that I had of myself was not the winning ticket, was not what was going to lead me to the promised land of peace and authenticity. But I sure as hell didn't know what to do about it or how to change. I wasn't educated. I didn't have a support system that was going to guide me or enlighten me. As to how to break out of that. Frankly, there was a lot of generational influence and people from my past that also struggled with those things. And, you know, you reach a point where you have to look at yourself in the mirror and decide that you are responsible for your own happiness. And it can't be the fact that other people didn't know or guide the way to help you. It has to be you're the one that's deciding that you're going to help you. And with that, really became some of the first steps of me going into coaching and me going into therapy and getting help and having different supports, and honestly saying no to what was not working for me and losing people as a result of that. And, step by step, beginning to think, who am I going to be if thinking that I don't deserve better is no longer an option? Who am I going to be if this negative self-talk that I have in my head is no longer something I'm willing to keep around? And so just learning that that process of owning my thoughts and owning my experience, and that I was the only one who was going to get myself out of it, right? At least at that time, as time has gone by, I've certainly learned to let people in, and I've learned the power of asking for support and help. But at the time, those first early steps are really you on you. And I talk about this a lot. I was talking about this on Instagram. God, do I love that. I hate going on Instagram. By the way, if you follow me on Instagram, you see me on Instagram, just know I am really trying with the Instagram thing. It's very hard to be a promoter of authenticity while also like creating reels and content on Instagram. It's very difficult. I have not yet mastered it. I am super uncomfortable with it, but I almost feel like I would rather just be totally out there with how uncomfortable I am doing Instagram than have any second go by that anyone thinks that I think I know what I'm doing. So I'm just gonna say that right now. Anytime you see me on Instagram talking or reeling or whatever, just know that a lot of thinking went into whether or not this was gonna be something that I could tolerate putting out into the world. Because it's just such a new way of communicating. Um, but that doesn't mean it can't be authentic. It just means that it's new for me. And so I am leaning in to said newness, as best as I possibly can. Super uncomfortable all the while. Okay, anyway, I got off track. So being focused on, okay, I'm having some negative self-talk. I'm having some beliefs that think that this is too hard, that think that I can't get it done. And then realizing, okay, it is my responsibility, my life, my responsibility. The only way that I'm going to be able to care for myself, the only way I'm going to be able to create opportunities is if I decide that this negativity that's trying to protect me, trying to keep me small, trying to keep me safe is no longer driving the game, right? So as you can imagine, that takes a lot of risk and a lot of immediate conflict with others in the world. If you're like, no, I think I actually should be having a better life than this. No, actually, I think that, me working as much as I'm working is providing me one outcome, but it's kind of destroying me in another outcome. So that's not going to work for me. Or, maybe I'm not satisfied with the type of education that I got and I need to like revamp it and invest money in it and invest time in it and, you know, educate myself further and volunteer. I mean, I volunteered. Listen, people. I was waiting tables for 15 years. I have great, great respect. And frankly, some of the best people that I know are people that I have waited tables with in the past. And you know who you are. Um, I had to decide to step out of what I knew to survive, to create a life that could allow me to be a professional, a well-rounded, educated person beyond the basic education that I had, to be able to evolve into something greater, more sophisticated. And I had to volunteer my time. I volunteered for a suicide hotline for 2 years in New York City while waiting tables in order to gain some of the experience and credentialing that was necessary in order to apply to grad school to then get my master's in social work and then go on to get various licensures and independent licensures and clinical licensures to then have the professional experience that I have now. And so volunteering for 2 years at a suicide hotline, like, let me just tell you, that's some real stuff. That's some real stuff in New York City to not only spend your daytime hours when you were otherwise waiting tables and then having to go do overnight shifts once a month to do the nighttime overnight shifts at a suicide hotline, young, grappling with self-doubt, wanting something more in your life, but knowing that the only way to get forward was to take that step, was to confront, to create conflict in yourself about, okay, I'm having this negative perception and that ain't gonna work anymore. It ain't gonna work, and I have to do something different, and I have to take responsibility for my life in order to achieve that and get to that place. And so there was no damn time. to be talking bad about myself. There was no damn time to be thinking that it wasn't going to work out. I just had to keep taking one step and one step and one step. And there, frankly, wasn't enough energy in my life to do that and believe that I wasn't deserving at the same time. So I had to just let it go. I had to completely surrender into the idea of, you know what? What if I am awesome? What if I am beautiful? What if I am talented? What if I am smart? What if I am perceived well by others? What if I am what I want to be, even though I don't totally buy it right now, right? 20-year-old self. What if I just decided that I could be? And I'm just gonna lean into that and start taking steps with that in mind. And so the inspiration that kept me going is that once I started defying the negativity, once I started saying, F you, to all of this self-talk, to all of this, well, you didn't get a good, you got a degree in some bullshit sort of thing, and you should have done this, and you should have done that, and you should have made this choice, and you should have come from this background, and you should have stood up to that person, and you should have not allowed this to happen. You should have not allowed that to happen. I mean, I could go on. Like, you feel what I'm saying? Do you remember your 20-something-year-old self? Because I sure as hell do. And I feel so sad for that girl. I feel so, she was like really having a hard time. And thank goodness I'm now in the fun stages of midlife where I can look back and say, wow, that was hard in a way that this phase of life is not the same type of hard, right? There's a busyness and an overwhelm here that exists now in midlife. And I'm so grateful that I'm also not doubting and talking badly about myself in this phase of life because I definitely wouldn't have time for that. But I know I'm maybe unique and maybe have taken some steps in a direction to help myself with this that other people are still struggling with, right? So if you're that person who has always had self-doubt, who's always had sort of a negative bias in terms of how you talk to yourself or how you think about yourself or what you think you look like or what you think attractiveness is or what you think niceness is or likability is, all the things that other people are judging about you, right? Or would determine to be okay about you. If you're buying into, oh, I don't know if they think that, or if, maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe I'm not okay enough. If you're buying into going against yourself, today is the day that you have to let that go. Today is the day that you have to surrender this negative talk about you if you want to be able to create some peace and some momentum moving forward. Because being true to yourself means you have your own back. Being true to yourself means you do not go against who you are, what you look like, where you come from, likely things that will not change. But it doesn't mean that you taking responsibility for who you want to be moving forward can't completely alter your life course. And frankly, that is my story. My story is I came from one set of circumstances. I came from a world, I came from an influence, I came from pain, and I created opportunity and power from that pain because I was unwilling to stay there. And I surrendered. I surrendered the negativity. Released the idea that how I was thinking about myself could remain. And so that was really the beginning of all of this. And as we stand today and as we look at, why I've created this program and why I'm putting in this time with the podcast and why I created the masterclass and why I created a course that was sort of palatable and accessible to people who were probably experiencing the same sort of negativity and the same sort of self-doubt and the same sort of overwhelm in their thinking was because it's tragic to have anyone live in this miraculous world with the opportunities that we have as being alive and not take full advantage of their right to believe in themselves, of their right to know who they are, and that that person is okay, that that person deserves more than being torn apart from the inside out. I lived that. I overcame that. I help people now in my profession overcome that. It's not all that I do, but it's a lot of what I do because a lot of us struggle with that. And I don't care if we're calling it mental health care, if we're calling it well-being care, if we're calling it um, just overall mindset training and sort of self-awareness and self-esteem. And I really don't care what we call it. If we call it authenticity, I don't care. It means that you have a right and a freedom to have being your number one fan in your mind, in your self-talk, in your experience with yourself, even if it didn't start out that way. So let this be hopefully a helpful and empowering and like lighten that fire conversation today where you say to yourself, huh, maybe I haven't really surrendered, letting go of every time I tear myself down, of every time when I talk badly to myself, I'm digging myself that much further into this hole, into this hard hole, into this overwhelming hole. Like, what if I just let that go? What if I decided I don't know what comes next, but I know that I can't stay here, right? What's it? You don't have to go home, honey, but you can't stay here. I mean, yeah, like, I don't care where you go next. You'll figure it out. That's the beauty of the human experience is that we can. We can figure out problems. We can carve new paths. We can correct mistakes. Most things are figure outable and solvable, right? Isn't there a book someone wrote somewhere? It's most things are figure outable. Props to her. Like, yeah, it is. So that's what I wanted to share today. If you have experienced a negative self-talk, you're normal. I think it's rare to probably not have experienced that, frankly. If you've never experienced any negative self-talk and you're like totally agreed with you, maybe there's something else going. But the rest of us probably have experienced that type of language in our head at one point or another. And surrendering it and letting it go and deciding you need to do something more and being willing to take on the hard and the unknown of what comes next is the path, is the way forward. We can't create in our authentic voice and our authentic self. And we sure as hell cannot grapple with the hardness of life and the overwhelmingness of the bills and the families and the kids and the boundaries and the bosses and the relationships and the friendships and the pressures and the societals and the so surrender, let it go, be willing to believe more of what's possible for yourself. And let's talk about it. Let's talk about where you're getting stuck and why it's hard. And don't give up when that happens. Know that other people are also stuck in the same place. I promise you they are. I promise you that other people are also stuck. So we can do it. We can move forward together, having conversations about, well, what are you doing? And I noticed I was having this belief, and gosh, this just feels so old, or I think this comes from my parents, or this comes from my siblings, or this comes from that teacher, that influence, and I don't want that in my life anymore. I want to surrender it. I want to release it. You can. And that's what we're here to do. So I hope this makes sense. Shoot me a DM. Instagram message me because you know I love that. I really will like respond to you on Instagram. If you message me, I think if I know how to do it, I will definitely try. Or you can shoot me an email at theauthenticitymindset.com. Take a look at the program. Keep listening to the podcast. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if there's something else that you want me to be addressing. I got so many more ideas that are coming, folks, in future episodes. We're going to have another guest come and share their story again soon. And I hope that you're loving this content. I really appreciate all the positive feedback that has been coming since we have launched this podcast. I feel the energy, I feel the momentum. It's very exciting. I'm so glad that it's been received so well by so many of you and that people are really liking what we're putting out there. So we're going to keep it going. Okay. Notice the negativity, surrender. Figure out the next step later. You can do it. Okay. See you next time. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you found something that feels right for you. Remember, while I am a psychotherapist, I am not your psychotherapist. So if you're looking for therapy, make sure you find a licensed mental health provider in your area. And I guess like and subscribe because that's what they do these days. We want more people involved, right? Go get it. See you next time.